You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We love MotoGP. Hello and welcome to Missed Apex MotoGP Podcast. This is a show put together by MotoGP fans pretending to be experts. We aim to have a race review show ready for a midweek commute. We may just be punters, but we love to talk. The longest season in MotoGP history finally draws to an end in Valencia, where Marco Bezzecchi and Aprilia once again cut themselves out as the package to beat. But can they be considered as the hot favourites for next season? As ever, I'm your host Kyle Power, and once again, the Missed Apex late season injury curse has struck, leaving me with just one fellow MotoGP enthusiast, none other than Matt Trumpets. How's it going, Matt?
It's going great. I gotta say, I think Zarco deserves a medal because he put Bagnaia out of his misery for this entire season early on, so he could go back and have a nice, relaxing hot chocolate in the box.
Oh my God, it's the most humane thing to do, wasn't it?
Exactly, right?
Oh, that's absolutely brutal. Poor Pecco. Oh,
Yeah.
God, yeah. But that's hard to argue about that. I felt so sorry for the guy. That shot of him just looking forlornly, like out the corner watching the race go by, like, oh man, the heart goes out to him. It just couldn't have finished on a worse note, could it? It just sums up, though. It just sums up. Oh, dear.
It's just how bad luck works. It doesn't come equally spaced. When things go wrong, they just go wrong and wronger and wrongest. I had one of those runs once that ended up with a plane crash, not one that I was on, completely destroying my travel plans. And it was literally just 24 hours of everything I'm touching is going exactly the wrong way. So I feel for him, but good news is once that's over, then you can go back to coasting for a while.
Yikes. Well, tune into Missed Apex MotoGP Extra, where we could discuss Matt's life traumas. That we could. But going into this weekend then, it's the final round of the longest season in history. Jorge Martin returns, finally, again, but has to face a double long lap penalty for his Motegi misdemeanors. Maverick Vinales finally returns, still suffering of that shoulder injury picked up in the Saxon ring. Aleix Espargaro is another welcome returner for a wild card on the Honda, but don't tell Mr. Morbidelli that. Hervé Poncharal, we should mention, the Tech Trois team boss, who's been around the paddock since forever, is retiring and is going. We all love Hervé, and it was a fantastic on TNT Sports. He had quite a few great sort of interviews on the World Feed, I think, as well. So what a character! Be very sorely missed. Oliveira will be sorely missed as well. This is his final race in MotoGP before heading over to World Superbikes. And again, returning, we've got Augusto Fernandez on the Yamaha V4 ahead of a very important test on Tuesday. So, Matt, into practice and qualifying, Acosta very, very quick, but your boy Miller was also looking fast.
Yeah, I am a Jack fan, mostly because he's the closest thing to my age I can currently find on track. And I'm like, yes, if he can do it, there's still hope for me. Yeah. In relative MotoGP terms. But yeah, he had said previously that he really enjoys this track. In fact, I think he called it like a MotoGP go-kart track as such. And it was very clear he was not only on it with the setup from the beginning, but he's just so comfortable with this kind of a layout. And I think, too, due to the temperatures, which will probably raise their heads later on in discussion, it was a very low grip surface. And he's, what was it Quartaro said about him just turning his brain off into corners? I think that is always helpful when you're riding in low grip conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a screen biter, you could say, where you could just get the lap time out of it. And that's quite a lot of praise coming from Quartararo, who's known as a bit of a screen biter himself. And we've seen him demonstrably pull out crazy quali laps. So it was very, very slippy. Bezzecchi and Agura, go through lovely, but it was looking a bit sketchy for them at one point. Bagnaia was quite poignant to miss out. Again, looking like one of those strange weekends for him. He was going to miss out. But Alex Marquez getting directly through to Q2 means he's the only rider this season to appear in Q2 at every single race. So I think that's quite an achievement.
It just goes to show you the 24 was the best bike of the season all round, is what I'd say.
Oh, well, I think that's one data sample point, maybe, but that's going to be a discussion we can talk about later because I think that's come up loads. Like, was the GP24 the best bike? I mean, that's one of the hot topics at the end of this season. So, it's really good to see, at least just one rider just nail it and just nail it all the time. And it's good to see Alex being so consistent when I wrote him off at the start of the season as being very inconsistent. And the only one of our panel who really had faith in him at the start was Danny. We're going to have to do some off-season content where we go back and review our predictions at the start of the season because, holy moly, I think me and Danny were certain right. Danny was very right, particularly about Alex Marquez, and there were some people who were very, very, very wrong, Matt.
Yeah, I think personally, Danny was just being contrary to be contrary, and he got lucky. But I'm sure he will come back and defend himself as having a reasoned analysis before the season started. But it is interesting when you say best bike, you have to define what you mean by best. And for me, the widest setup window and the easiest to get consistent lap times on across the board, I still think is the 24, even though we've seen other bikes have peakier performance.
Okay. I usually think the best bike is the one that finishes at the front of the championship at the end of the season, you could say, in simple black and white terms, but it's never, never as straightforward to that as that, is it? So going into Q1, someone who didn't have a straightforward session was Bagnaia again. He was sitting P2, he was looking pretty quick, his pace, but then the bike stopped. It looked like a bike problem. Matt, they'd not put enough fuel in it, Matt.
Somebody forgot to carry a one is what it looks like when they did the fuel calculations. And this really does get down to, you sort of wonder a little bit. I've not had a chance to talk to anyone who's works in the box, or the engineer, anybody else like that. But you do sort of wonder how much of their attention is on not just trying to solve this weekend's problem, because it did, up until that point, look like a very Bagnaia-ish weekend. Slow on Friday,
Yeah, true.
Q1, he put in that lap, and he was straight to the top by a significant margin, and you're like, "Okay." And imagine he could have easily started dead last, running out of fuel before everybody else gets their final hit. I think everybody else had, like, 2 bites at that apple after he
Yeah.
set his time. So, clearly the bike was working for him, but with the test on Tuesday coming up, and with all the issues they're trying to work through, someone just didn't put the right number in the spreadsheet, didn't carry a 1, it
Yeah,
just
it's some
like,
sort of
"Oh,
finger trouble,
man."
isn't it? It must be
Yeah.
because it wasn't like right at the very end. He missed out. I think, yeah, at least one
It
lap.
was
So it
around
wasn't.
5 or 6 minutes left, I thought. Like, he set this one very fast lap,
Yeah.
and then I recall everybody else was just maybe coming out, and,
It's quite a
then he's
spectacular sort of miscalculation, but I love how he dealt with this because he basically said it, and he really pointed out in the press asked him there. I think they were trying to lead him in and seeing how frustrated he was trying to get him to slag a team off, and he goes, "Well, no, everyone makes mistakes." He goes, "I made a mistake last year and lost us a championship," and I was like, "I love this is what I really like about Bagnaia. Like he's super honest and just like really open about it." So it was really unfortunate for him because, like you're saying, he's been building through the weekend, was looking really, really quick. It was really good also, really quick in Q1 was Aleix Espargaro pretty much matching the full-time rider Marini as well. But anyway, Bagnaia got stranded, left him stranded in 16th position on the grid. But somebody who did come through was Raul Fernandez and Johan Zarco, who would be making an appearance later and a half with Mr. Bagnaia. But Fernandez, yeah, oddly, I didn't realize. I completely forgot looking back through my notes and stuff that he actually came through Q1 because he had a rip snorter of the weekend and it was really, really quick. So on to Q2 and Bezzecchi really quick again. That Aprilia all-time lap record to get pole, but it was so close. There was 1/10 of a second, Matt, covering the top 5. It's insane.
Yeah, and again, we get to another one of my new rule for MotoGP, which is the moment you win the championship mathematically, you're done for the season. Because look at how exciting it got as soon as and I feel bad because I know it was such a tiny mistake by Bezzecchi, and it had far-reaching consequences for Mark that you'd never want to see someone injured. But I'm like, seriously, MotoGP, I know the guys at FIM are probably listening right now.
I'm
Just
sure they
consider this. Consider this as part of your concessions. Like, once you've won, you're done for the season.
Oh, what, like
Maybe
forced retirement? So, like, what's your well, maybe if your name's Marc Marquez, if you win, like, 5 races or 6, 7 races ahead of time, they're like, "Okay, like, that's it. Go on
yeah,
an early holiday. Go and have an early
but you
lunch."
have to have mathematically won the championship, so it's over and done with, and look at how exciting everything got for us the moment that happened, and I think what that will do, like, it addresses the problem of the runaway championship, maybe, by
Maybe.
removing the rider who's absolutely at the front, and it certainly did for us. It's unusual to see Bagnaia as far behind as he was,
I'm
and
not
I guess we'll
sure.
talk about that later.
I'm not sure how much his sponsors are gonna like that, and his personal sponsors have been able to sit on the sideline for they're paid for the season's races, but I like your idea. Um, Luckily, Bezzecchi did it for us. Well, I say luckily, to be honest, I think some of these last races would have been much better with Mark in them, because I think the Aprilia was looking, like, clearly really strong and hard to touch, and I think Mark would have been able to touch it, so it would have been interesting. So, yeah, Bez sticks it on pole then. Alex Marquez a very close second. Digi making an appearance back towards the front of the timesheets again. He seems to blow hot and cold quite a lot and goes up and down, very inconsistent, but him on third, Matt, that's pretty strong.
Yeah, and again, we talk about the consistency, it's that 25 bike, and I think now we're at the end of the season, the riders are feeling a little more okay to talk about the pluses and minuses of their equipment, whereas during the season, it's all, we're a team, we work together, and the teams themselves are now highly secretive about what their issues are. Might have been that way in the past, but I didn't watch in the past, so I don't know. But he was like, "Yeah, the bike does blow hot and cold. It'll feel great. You won't change a thing, and then the next day, it's just gone." And, it seems to be a Ducati, characteristic right now. And, it's also worth mentioning that he and Morbidelli were engaged in a duel to the death for that top spot in the, Riders' Championship as well. I think there was, like, just a
Oh,
point or
yeah.
2 between them, so it was, there was a lot kind of riding on it for Digi here and for
Mm.
Morbidelli.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we'll maybe touch on later, we might talk about it, and Morbidelli kind of does a good job to eliminate himself out of that. So basically, yeah, so Digi on the front row, really good to see him back. Fernandez, an incredible fourth. So for Q1 up into fourth, just underlying how quick he was looking all weekend. And he was looking arguably better than he did in the Phillip Island weekend. He was just been super solid all weekend. Acosta fifth, again, very fast, absolutely solid. Quattararo in sixth, doing his usual qualifying magic, and Morbidelli in seventh as we move on to the sprint review. On to the sprint review then, and Matt, you love tyres. There was an interesting tyre choice at the start of this.
Yeah, there was. The temperature of the track was fairly low. It was down in the teens. I believe it was like 16. And, Michelin comes along and discusses with all of the teams their engineering take on the performance envelope of their tires when the track is at that temperature. Because essentially, the ambient temperature doesn't matter. The question is how much solar, radiation is hitting the track and how much the aggregate then, absorbs. Interesting comment from one of the writers that the track looked less black. It looked grayer for whatever reason. I don't know that they resurfaced at all, but they felt like the color of the surface was different. So it's already going to absorb less energy, relatively speaking, and reflect more back. But also, it was a cloudy day, so you don't have the sun really putting energy into the track to begin with. And Michelin basically said, we are at the cutoff line of what we think the hard front tire will be able to operate in. So you could consider at this temperature going with the soft, which should have a better performance envelope at this specific track temperature. And of all the teams that got told that, only Aprilia and Trackhouse, to my knowledge, made the
Aprilia
swap.
as
And
well, yeah.
specifically Fernandez and Bezzecchi. I'm not sure about the
I think it was
other
all the
riders.
Aprilias. I think all of them went
Yeah,
for the soft, I think.
yeah, only ones.
Yeah, but that's interesting. That's good. That's good insight. And tune in next week for more gravel and aggregate insights from our very own tarmac specialist, Matt Trumpets. So it, but it is poignant in the sprint. That's why I love the sprint format, that you can have these like mini little gambles and yeah, tire risks. It did look like it affected them a bit at the end of the race, but Matt, made a terrible start at the start of the race. Was that his front tyre?
Well, I had no, because it was immediate from the start. As soon as he got into turn 1, he was not, performant. The bike wasn't compliant, and you could just see people with so much more pace, which is, I guess from Acosta, you sort of expect it, but you don't normally see, an Aprilia, or we haven't since Phillip Island, I think, really seen Aprilia paddle backwards. Turns out it was his ride height device, and there was a plethora, to use a 25-cent word, as we say over here. There was a lot of ride height devices and other issues this particular weekend, and,
We've had them all year, haven't we, really? They're annoying.
yeah, and so the end result of that was that he just loses places and ultimately winds up trapped behind, Quartararo, who wasn't fast, but was very demonic in possessing corners,
And
and
late
that
on the brakes, yeah.
wound up being his fight for most of the sprint. So immediately, we don't get a good read on the Aprilia because he's running at Yamaha pace, and I think by the time he gets by, there's not enough time left to do much else.
No, he gets stuck, doesn't he?
Yeah, but it was enough to seal, 4th place in the championship, as I recall. Like, he did the minimum.
Oh, no, for Bezzecchi, that's third. He's already, I think,
Third,
yeah,
sorry.
he's absolutely nailed.
Acosta is who I'm thinking of
That was it.
later on.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was Acosta, but yeah, we'll get on to him a little bit later. But Fernandez was doing well. He was up to third, looking really, really quick on the Aprilia. But then
Yeah.
probably my favourite moment of the race was about to occur, and the Honda grand master plan to not lose their concessions. Phase 1 kicked in as Johan Mir tucks the front and takes Marini, his own teammate, out, and then gets himself a long lap penalty for the pleasure mat. I was like, oh, this is their perfect plan coming in. Surely he was just operating on team instructions there.
You would think so, that somebody back at the factory who doesn't have to travel said, "Hey, yeah, I will buy you a present if you can manage to take your teammate out and get a penalty, so that as the leading Honda rider, starting in the position that will raise us out of the concessions, you're gonna make your teammate have to fight his way forward from, what was it, like 12th maybe?
I think so, yeah. Yeah,
Something like
yeah, and
that,
done that. So
that row, and it was sheer perfection, although, and he even did a great job selling it because he complained bitterly about this penalty.
yeah, he did, because he said, well, it's just going to kill overtaking, because he's had a lunge up the inside and tucked the front and gone down. And he referenced another crash incident. I can't remember what it was. And that was just somebody.
Ogura in the Sachsen ring.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. So that was just a case of someone just generally losing it, not trying to overtake somebody and then skittling somebody. Whereas this one, they said, because you are actually actively trying to make an overtake and you've made a mistake and taken him out, that it doesn't
That's
play
on
out.
you, bud.
Yeah, I always think it's quite odd. It's like the Aprilia situation. So, because Jorge Martin, when he come back this weekend, has to serve his double long lap penalty for taking out Bezzecchi in Motegi. I know they have to treat all the riders individually, but I find it quite interesting that you could, if you were the team and it's rider on rider, you can maybe appeal to them and go, no, don't, we don't want any infighting, like we don't want to press charges, so to speak. But it doesn't work
Well,
like that. The stewards have to treat each rider independently, regardless. I would find it odd when teammates take each other out and then one of them ends up getting a penalty for it. Because if I was the team boss, I'd be protesting to not give my rider a penalty.
yeah, no, and we've seen that in other motorsports where when it's team-on-team violence, and they don't complain about it, the stewards will just be like, "Okay, you're gonna sort that out inside the team. We're not gonna worry about it." I hate, because it so obviously was, Mir's fault. I hate that he has a really good argument here, though. I'm curious to get your take because you've got a much deeper, and more resonant history of watching the sport. But to me, his point about overtaking is correct because I do feel like, with these tires and in this specification, you can make a responsible overtake attempt, and the bike will just simply go before you have a chance to recover it. Like
Yeah.
it'll happen so fast you can't fix it.
Well, and
So
it's
what
so
he's
hard to
saying is,
overtake as well, so you have to take a bit of a risk to try
especially
to
at
do
this
it.
track. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think For me, I would like to see a real delineation, and I don't know how you do it. I think this is the other, like, technically,
It's subjective, isn't it?
how would you
Mm.
say, "Okay, that was too risky, you took too much risk there, there was no way you were actually gonna make it through that corner and save the bike," versus, "Okay, yeah, you carried more speed in because 'cause you're making an overtake, but you were well within a window where you would expect the bike to be compliant, and it just wasn't for whatever reason." Because we do. I mean, we see, how
Yeah.
many times the rider said, "Oh, yeah, I was going around the corner, wasn't going that fast, and the next thing I know, I'm sliding into a gravel trap." It
Well, we've seen
just,
it loads,
I
haven't we? Especially like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bagnaia having weird front end just loses and the bike's just skidding out from underneath
Yeah,
him in a stranger. So yeah, no, I kind of sympathise with Mir here, and I think you're onto something here. Like, and that's exactly the point he was making is like you're going to kill it. We have to try at least to overtake, and it seems to be the default now that if somebody makes a mistake and goes down, a penalty will be dished out. And we've seen this four-wheeled friends do the same as well. In Formula One, there seems to always has to be a penalty, but the problem is now everything has to be so black and white and defined and transparent that you're going to have to define reckless. Where is that reckless line of where it goes from? That was ambitious, but yeah, you made a mistake and you go down, or okay, that was reckless, you're being penalised. It's just a matter of opinion in a lot of people's things. But MotoGP could do it because they have a constant steward in Simon Crafar. So it should be consistent. At least you can have, yes, it's somebody's opinion, but it's the same opinion every time. And if it's applied consistently, that's a whole can of worms you can go down as well, because you could say he favours some riders over the other. But yeah, this is actually a good lead in for the next point. So are we saying that Mir deserved the penalty here? I'm saying if I'm a Honda main boss, I'm saying, yeah, he did. Give him a massive penalty so he
yeah.
don't get concessions.
You'd think that was a
Give
master
Marini a
plan.
penalty as well. Like, give
Yeah.
Marini a penalty for being in the way as well. Like, give him one.
Yeah, could we just penalize the boat? Make him start from the back, please.
Yeah, yeah.
I gotta be honest, I didn't go back. I didn't go back and look at the footage of his actual attempt. And for me, I'd at least want to 100% eyeball it a few times at slow speed just to get a sense of because really, and this is true in all motorsports, what it comes down to is like how much overspeed are you carrying on entry?
Yeah, we didn't get a great view of it. It was from the inside, and it looks just like a
Yeah,
general, move, and it's just tucked the front, and it's so easy to
yeah.
do. And like you said, at a track like this, so I think it's probably, in the grand scheme of things, probably fair cop to have a penalty. But are we talking about the actual concept of do we have to penalise every single incident? But it's interesting. So, and this leads us on to our next one because shortly after that, we had Miller on Aldeguer in quite an unusual incident, which looks like Aldeguer was gesticulating in the middle of it, even in the middle of the incident happening. Miller gets a penalty that I've not seen before, drop 3 places, and then subsequently ignores it and gets a long lap penalty anyway. But that's odd. Now, oh no, what's your take on this, Matt?
Okay, so I actually love this for discussion purposes because when I saw it happen in the race, it looked very clearly like, Miller simply ran wide, passing Aldeguer and smashed a bunch of his aero off. And then the comms guys were like, "Oh, that was a Larry attempt up the inside, blah, 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 blah." And he gets the 3 drop, which, okay. This is sort of like, I feel like that's the stewards going, "This was kind of 50 we see it a bit 50-50, so we're just gonna we just wish to restore status quo ante." And the race director can kinda do whatever he wants, so that's what
It's
he
a bit of
did.
a lick your finger and stick it in the air, like, oh, what do I feel?
Well,
They've kind of plucked. Oh no, I think it's odd.
and then I watched the race the next day, and we're not talking about the race, but one of the things they did do is they showed a replay of it, sort of a closer in replay from a little farther back in the corner. And I watched it and I stopped and I rewound it and I watched it again and I stopped and rewound it. And by the third time I'd done it, I'm like, oh no, 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 no. Miller is 1,000% right here. This is all on Aldeguer. He intentionally caused this contact.
Ooh,
And he knew where Miller was and he tightened into him. He leans off the bike to actually shoulder Miller. And then afterward, before Miller's even clear of him, he's already got his left arm up and gesticulating. This is your classic football foul.
You reckon he's done a bit of a professional dive, so to speak?
Absolute dive,
Really? Oh my god,
yeah, no,
controversial
I'm a
views, Matt. I
hundred
like this.
I'm yeah, everybody, if you have access to it, go back, watch it slowly, and, you can see things like, the corners enough that Aldeguer had his knee down. His whole bike was behind Miller. He was so far behind, he was able to lean the bike and get his knee down, and you can see on exit, because the angle was a little more, was a little better because you have the context of the entry of the corner more so than you did on the sprint race. You can 100% see that it's Aldeguer tightening into Miller and much less Miller washing out wide into Aldeguer. Aldeguer had him ahead the whole time, saw Miller was dead on. He could absolutely see where Jack was. And instead of either holding his line or going a little bit wider to avoid any potential contact, he does the opposite. He comes in
Trying to
like
squeeze
he's
him.
trying to squeeze him. And after the contact, he does the big gesticulation. And what, Miller said about this, because, he was, he was quite he said a lot to many people about this for a long period of time, and he actually didn't even go see the stewards. He's like, "Nah, I'll talk to Simon later, but it'll be better that way, trust me." But he said that what he's doing is exactly that. He's letting the brakes off late and tightening when you try to overtake, and he said it's a habit that all of the young riders seem to have, and then he pointed out, and I'm sure you probably already forgot, there was a similar incident with Bender in the last race.
Oh yeah, there was an Aldeguer like punted
Mhm.
Binder, but then actually didn't get any
Yeah.
penalty. It wasn't even looked at, was it? Oh yeah,
No,
we
it
talked about it.
wasn't. And
That's
so,
forgot about
and
that.
so this to me, unlike the mirror thing, which I think is really, it's a challenge for the stewards, to figure out how to be fair about that
That is actually
and
right.
not kill the racing. This is something I think they absolutely need to stamp out as a riding style. That might work in Moto too, but it absolutely needs to, what do you say, get into the sea
Yeah.
in MotoGP because it
Yeah.
will wreck the racing.
Oh wow. I just think it's interesting. I can't believe I can't get that. I remember I've got it in my head. It's vividly flashing back in my head now. The Aldeguer, I think it's Aldeguer punting Binder in
Yep.
Portimao, wasn't it? And passing him, which is arguably worse than what Jack did, and it didn't even get looked at. And then Jack gets a rather bizarre, not drop one place, drop 3 places. Seems an oddly specific,
Yeah.
sort of strange. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So I don't think Cravar and the stewards have sort of covered themselves in glory here. Really, I'm inclined. You made such a convincing argument there. I don't think that Aldeguer would have done it on purpose. I think he was probably defensive already and was already planning to squeeze, knowing someone was there. But I think it's just unfortunate, a bit of a racing incident. Um, I certainly
I
don't
don't
think there's
see how
penalty
he
in
didn't
that.
see that contact coming, and he just kept on going. He just
Wow.
kept on going. It's my line. And again, Miller, if you look at where the contact happened, Miller's bike was well ahead of him the entire corner from entry to exit.
Oh, let's not go into controversial first at Apex rules. Let's not talk about that.
No,
We're
no,
on
no, no,
thin
no,
wheels and
no, no.
hopefully some
I don't
flat.
wanna I don't wanna get into that. My point being, Miller was, unlike a lot of times where you have incidents, Miller was absolutely in a place where Aldeguer had eyes on him the whole corner.
So maybe they're punishing the outcome because there's a lot of gesticulating. You see the wings come
Yes,
off. I think it was
hence
the
the dive
opinions of the stewards,
strategy.
maybe, yeah, the dive. Yeah, so okay, fair point. That's interesting. We could argue and debate that
Oh, you
all
and me,
all on, but we
Kyle,
will.
we've never
Yes.
been known to argue endlessly about brake settings in a bar. No, never.
No, at 4 in the morning. Wait, making everyone want to commit suicide as whiskey fueled arguing over brake bias settings.
Oh my
Anyway, we're not
goodness.
getting into that. Basically, so yeah, lap 5, it took Bezzecchi to get past Quartararo in the end. We'll move on from while all these incidents are sort of going on. Bezzecchi's getting a bit held up. Alex Marquez is disappearing at the front, stretching lead. But there was one really good thing happened like towards the end of this race, which was really interesting to look. Was Fabio De Giannantonio's, I just call him Digi, it's so much easier. De
We all do.
Giannantonio's,
Yeah.
yeah, multi-corner, sort of half a lap move to snatch the podium away from Fernandez. Now, do you think Fernandez's soft tyre got off by this point?
I do think, and I will say maybe it's not even the soft tire, but whenever you change tire compound, you're also changing balance between the tires.
Hmm.
So say the soft was grippier, you're changing the demand you're putting on that rear tire, which had been set up entirely to deal with a hard front tire, which is really the tire everybody else ran with. So either the settings were therefore then off, they weren't able to adapt it to the new balance between the 2 compounds front to back, or it was just simply the front began to go a little bit, so he was just losing a little bit. The other thing being, we've seen late race pace from Digi a couple of times now,
Yeah, true.
and this is also can be a feature of the Ducati because it was Bastianini's port of call when he was on the team as well. So it could be that the Ducati is the 25 version at least. It will be your friend if you just sort of gentle those tires in the opening laps. And I don't recall if he was stuck behind someone and gradually made his way through. He made a great move on somebody, didn't
Yeah,
he, to get
um,
through?
there was that. It was Fernandez right at the end to go into the podium because no, he got where did he start moving up? Because I think he made a really good start, and I think he was into fourth already off the start.
Okay.
Actually, to be honest, because Bez went down, and I think he made a quite a strong start. But he seemed a bit disappointed at the end of the whole weekend, thinking he could have got a little bit more out of it because he had really strong pace. But the move on Fernandez was awesome. It took like 4 or 5 corners of moving him offline, maneuvering the thing. I love seeing that play out like a half lap maneuvers. Are fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a very hard track to overtake. And the thing about it was so clean. It was a beautiful, clean maneuver. And I felt bad for Raul because at the time you're just going like,
Yeah.
"Oh, man," like, that Phillip, because everyone's like, "Phillip Island, yeah, but Bezzecchi, the long lap penalty, and then he has the crash," but, like, no, he showed up this weekend and he's like, "No, no, no, guys. You don't understand. For the first time in my life, I've got the team that I need, and I've got the bike that's the correct tool for the job, and I'm gonna show you the reason why I got invited to come here in the first place."
Well, yeah, and lots of criticism for Trackhouse for re-signing him again because is this his 4th season, 3rd or 4th
Yeah,
season, and
for
he's not really
yeah.
done an awful lot and been a lot of criticism, but it's lovely to see it click right at the end and sort of, yeah, so it shows the faith they put in him because this kid was unreal in Moto2, remember, like winning crazy amounts of races.
And he beat
Um,
Marquez's record, as I recall,
yeah,
for
yeah,
wins.
like
Yeah.
mad. He's a precocious talent. It just needs to get the best out of him. So it's lovely to see him doing this. But I was willing him on for a podium, but it wasn't to be. So did you nix the podium? So Alex Marquez wins. Acosta, a very strong second. We hardly
Yeah.
mentioned him in the
I
race. Really strong
feel
second.
bad for him. I really thought the sprint would be the one for him.
Yeah,
Didn't
he was on
you?
the
Like,
hunt,
I
wasn't he?
really he's winless. He's
Yeah.
if you ask anybody who watches, like, who's the best rider to come in the last 2 years, they're gonna be like Acosta, hands down. Has won nothing. Aldeguer, first season, yeah, no worries. I've already won. It's just like he's being very cool, and I think he matured so much over the course of this season. It was very impressive to watch, in terms of his attitude and how he's dealing with the team. But at the same point, he's like, "Yeah, this is not
Yeah.
real. We're not fighting for anything yet."
No, it must be very, very frustrating, and also with the uncertain times in the winter. But he's got another year. We'll see what they do next year. It'll be interesting. So, yep. So Digi on third. Fernandez hangs on for fourth. Bez could only managed fifth. Morbidelli in sixth. Quattararo in seventh with Binder and Agura, who seems to be going backwards all weekend, unfortunately, and didn't have a very good time in the Grand Prix, which we'll talk about now. So, as ever, with our Grand Prix reviews, we like to split them up into a few little topics. First, let's sum up a few people, mainly by manufacturer, really. So, Bezzecchi and Aprilia we'll talk about first, because, of course, a dominant win, third Grand Prix win of the year, 2 in a row. Only P5 in the sprint after his ride height device issues. I'm looking forward to when we can ban these ride height devices. But Matt, I've got a question to ask you. Obviously, we know how good Bezzecchi is. There's not much more to say. How he controlled the race, he just got away and just smashed it. He delivered on the pace that we thought. We knew if he got away in front, that's it. Bye bye, basically. Bye bye Bears. If Marc Marquez wasn't around next year, would you be happy to stick your neck out and say Bez is the hot favourite for the title?
Yeah, Aprilia. Yeah, I mean, who knows what Martin's gonna come into by the end of the season, but right now, Bez and that bike are perfectly suited for each other. He's figured out how to write it in a way nobody else has. I think Fernandez is now close.
Yeah, yeah.
And the nice thing for them is, I feel like their results at the end of the season are dead confirmation. They have the best chassis. They've got I think they got the best aero package. It's not perfect, but where they need to focus is very clear and consistent across all of their riders, which is primarily, stability in the braking zone. And we're
And that
going
was
to
the thing
talk
that
about
put
the, yeah, go ahead.
Martin off initially, wasn't it? That initial stability in the braking zones. And when he jumped back on it in the Mazzano test, he was like, oh, you've cured it, and then decided to stay.
Yeah, and that's, if you're a rider or a fan of a team, that's a great sign because it means they understand. They're not guessing. They're not looking at the data and going, "It doesn't make any sense." They're looking at it and going, "Oh, we can see exactly where the problem is, and we can see exactly what we need to do to try and fix it." And they were already on that, with testing, with some of the new aero bits they were trying out. They're already
Oh, the
looking
testing
to.
Tuesday today. We are recording on a Wednesday, oddly, for
Yeah.
us there. But so the test has happened, so we can actually reference a bit of the testing. And yeah, they had some pretty crazy error, it looked like.
Yeah, and also I find myself once again wanting them to just run the Dazzle livery all season long because it looks so cool on track. But
Yeah.
side note, yeah, I think beyond a shadow of a doubt, without Marquez, Aprilia would be the hands down favorite going into next season. We'll see what shows up in Malaysia for the real preseason testing. What all the teams manage to accomplish between now and then. But right now, yeah, Aprilia have the hot hand, and that'd be a solid bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'd be we just haven't hardly had a glimpse of what Jorge Martin could do on the bike, but Fernandez has just given us a window into, wow, this bike is genuinely good. So yes, it's a satellite team, but I believe they're full factory spec bikes. We've
Yeah.
discussed the difference between satellite and full factory before. And Agura, he got burnt with that horrible crash and like leg injury and lost his confidence, but he's coming back and coming back stronger. But don't forget how he started. So yeah, Aprilia. It's so cool to see because they are a tiny. People think of like the might of like a Yamaha, Honda, Ducati. I mean, even Ducati are relatively small compared to Yamaha and sort of Honda, the huge might. Aprilia, the Noelli, I think the town where they're from, they are actually always been a very, very small factory.
Yeah.
They're always very small, and I think it's the best looking bike by miles. I think it's fantastic. I love to see it, and I've always liked Aprilia doing things slightly differently. Like my favourite MotoGP bike of all time was the RS3, the Aprilia Cube from the original 990 era, which is just one of the best crazy bikes ever made. I love seeing them being this strong, and I love the little fun they're having with it as well. So Bezzecchi's actually won a bet with the CEO, Massimo Rivola, that he can actually keep his bike. So he gets to keep the bike and take it home with him, Matt. I mean, I would love one of them in my living room.
I would too. I'm not sure my wife would be so happy about something that large occupying our living room because we do live in a small New York apartment. It is a feel good story. And Rivola, I mean, I can't quote him precisely because of the generally safe for work attitude we have here at the show. But he said basically, I don't know what to do because usually at the end of the season, we're just utter garbage. And that's not happened now. And I think they brought some new people in. Their processes and workflows seem to have improved a lot. And that has made a huge difference in their success once they got the chassis and the arrows sorted out about mid-season or so.
Yeah. Yeah, it was mega. It was at Mazzano test, wasn't it? They had a couple of big upgrades mid-season and made a huge leap forward. Because to be honest, they looked very promising in testing, but then it did take Bezzecchi about mid-season before he finally appeared, because he had a bit of a wobbly. There was all sort of various issues. So, what was interesting to see was Jorge Martin coming back this weekend for them, and what I was surprised to find out, that they played this ultra sensible with Jorge Martin, but I didn't realize, Matt, how still screwed he was. And he was basically saying, I cannot afford to crash. Like, I cannot afford to crash at all. And hence, I cannot push. That must be terrifying riding around knowing you're in such a fragile state still.
Yeah, I won't pretend it's even close to the same thing, but the shoulder injury I got while cycling was similar to the one that Marquez had. And I asked the doc, I'm like, look, like can I get back on the bike? And they're like, well, you can, but if you fall off, it's like big time disaster surgery. And it does put the fear of God in you a little bit. I didn't use the rollers. I hooked it up on my trainer and I spent about 10 weeks,
Yeah.
riding indoors, just waiting for the thing to fully heal.
Yeah, and imagine him after all of the surgery he's had this year and done that. So,
Oh,
and he says he was tired and struggling. So they actually come up with a really cool strategy about this, that he intentionally ran wide at turn one because he knew it was pointless fighting because he had his double long lap from Motegi and he had
right.
to serve it. Otherwise, he would be carrying that into next year, I believe. So they're like, right, the purpose is to get here, serve that penalty, but also get some laps under your belt, start building your confidence and using it as a test session. But so much so, they were like intentionally run wide at turn one, drop to the back of the pack, do your double long lap, and then I think they'd already planned on lap 14 for him to retire. So he got pit boarded in, rode
Yep.
around,
Well,
waved to the fans, super sensible. I mean, wow, what else could they do? And it must have been nice for him knowing that there's no pressure on him, but it must have been, he's a world champion. It's the last race being world champion with the number one. It's a bit sad tootling around at the back, but what else can you do?
I mean, I think there's being sensible. You have the Tuesday test. He needs to take part in that. But, we also used to have a saying, you train to race, but then you race to train. He is not in race shape. And I think it was clear he could make the end of the sprint. How much far beyond that do you really want to push? Gets a rest day and then he's back on the bike Tuesday. You don't want to go to a point because when you get tired like that, that's when the accidents happen. That's when all them little tiny muscles you only use at the extreme end of I'm actually in competition and going this fast. A lot of those things, you just can't train them the same way until you do them. And it's just smart to bring him in early. The long lap really did take the pressure off, but wasn't he like up around 11th place at some point and like running as fast or within like a small margin of the guys at the front?
Yeah, I
It's
think
hard to beat that out of somebody who's a champion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a Q1. There was a bit in Q1 where he was on a lap and it was like, hello. And he was like, he's
Yeah.
actually pushing. And it was like, okay. Calm down, Jorge. So it's going to be interesting. They just need him in one piece and to stay on
Yeah.
the bike. So we'll move on for a fantastic season for them. And let's get Jorge Martin competitive next year. So let's talk about Ducati a bit and the conundrum that they have for 2026. I mean, let's just focus on them, the riders, one really. So Alex Marquez, brilliant sprint win. Only rider to beat Q2 in all of the races. But again, all tyres, Matt. You get to mention tyres again. Really struggled in the main race, dropping down to P6.
And again, this is one of these things. The sprint race was hard soft. The main race was hard medium. Now, obviously, they'd be prepared for that, and they'd advance the setup on the bike to compensate for it. But he just basically said, I got to about lap 5, and I had no grip. Like the grip just evaporated, and he spent the whole rest of the race just trying to ride backwards as slowly as possible. And that happens. These tires have a performance window, but as you know, what puts the energy into the tire is it's flexing. And on a cold track in a straight line, you can lose a lot of temperature out of the tire. And I think that it just either he took enough tread off of it through wear that he was having a hard time keeping the tire in the window, and
Well,
hence it was feeling low grip.
he
That would
does
be
kind of
my
mention, yeah, he kind of did kind of mention that. He said it was odd that the tyre performance started to drop massively, even though the tyre hadn't even fully come up to proper temperature yet. So I wonder if he got some cold tear or graining on it. But we have seen this with the Michelin tyre, and I think, was it Johan Mir, I think, in this race also complained of the same thing, saying they just had crazy rear end drop and don't know why. Remember last year that rear tyre that Jorge Martin got at Qatar as well, and
yeah.
saying just like it does happen that they, Michelin a great company and their quality control is good, but I think they do have the occasional duff tyre comes out because it's the age old classic, but we've seen it quite a lot the last couple of years of just inexplicable like drop offs.
And consider too, the fundamental nature of that 24 is to really use the front. And the more you use the front, the less you use the back. The less you use the back, the less you heat the back. And on the soft tire being more compliant and squishy, it worked. On the medium tire being a little bit stiffer construction, maybe not so much, and I'm glad you bring up graining 'cause, that that is also a really good bet for these problems. Because you slide the rear, it's not up to temperature, and it's like a pencil eraser on paper. You get all these little grains, and then it either clears or it doesn't, but until it does, yeah, it's like having your rear on ice every time you enter a corner, and that seemed to be sort of the nature of his complaint.
Yeah, yeah, you could really see him struggling with that. But I think it might be a bit of all you said. Of what you all just said there was completely correct. But I think this is and he was kind of he didn't say it directly at all, but he was like, "It's a very unusual. We weren't
Yeah.
expecting this at all." So I think it might have been a bit of a duff that he had, and then fell into all of those problems, which shouldn't really happen. So he fell into it so much. The jump around that Aldeguer ended up nailing him in the end. Like I think was it? I think it was a final lap in the last
Yeah, I
corner,
think you're
or like
right, yeah.
but and it was a tough move, but it was good, and it was nice to see them afterwards. He was like, "Yep, fair play." So he only finished P6 in the race, but what a great season for him. Couldn't ask for anything more. P2, stunning, and it was nice to, yeah, have a little battle with his protege.
Not only with his protege, but we saw him have a proper battle or 2 and win against his brother in
Yes.
a real race, and then to have this whole end of the season out of the shadow and really being able to be I feel like a lot of people are just evaluating him as him and not, "Oh, someone related to Mark," for the first time, and that has to it had to have been, very, very validating to use newspeak. It had to feel very good for him to have that shot and really be able to deliver in the way that he did. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
brilliant from him.
chapeau all the
So
way across the season. Well done.
yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Did you got on the podium? We already spoke about him. He's been a bit more vocal now about the inconsistencies, which we'd already talked about. Talk about inconsistencies and weird things happening. Frankie Morbidelli on the grid. What on earth, mate? It looked like he just zoned out and wasn't paying attention and just clattered into the back of Aleix. And these two have history. They've had a big war of words after their clash at, I think it was Silverstone, wasn't it? When Aleix there and Morbidelli was slagging him off there, and they've had a bit of a Twitter spat as well. So, of all the people he could have rear-ended, it's his foe, Aleix.
This seems to be his, signature trademark, and, the only thing I can say about it is, sometimes, there's a lot of spots on those grids, and it's easy to see how you might think you're, like, not even to the last row, but he was looking I think he was looking over for either his crew chief or a board. He was looking away from what was right in front of him, and he just didn't realize he was that far. Like, he was to the point where people were gonna be stopping, and so you can see him look back and smashes the rear of Espargaro, who because he was having issues with his own right height devices and things, waited to the very last second and put a really hard stop on to try I think to trying to get it engaged, if I
Just to
understand
engage the front, yeah.
how the tech works correctly, and, he just hits him and then does this thing where he just makes a right-hand turn, and okay, I'll tell you a story. I've been hit by a car once on a moped, and I went around the car, and it pulled out and smashed into my rear wheel. It hit me, but I had a line of cars to my left, and it hit me, and suddenly, because I was on throttle, I'm just heading straight towards a car, and in my brain, I'm just sitting there going like, "None of this made any sense," and the car is getting closer, and I had to think through, "Okay, if you're going fast at a car, release the throttle, apply" like, I literally had to think through it in steps like that, where normally that's entirely instinctive,
I
and
think
it was
most normal
like, to me,
people
that
would.
exact same kind of a crash where, like, he hits him, and then he's on the throttle, and he's still trying to figure it out, and he just smashes into the wall and falls
I mean,
over, breaks his hand. Ah,
well, yeah, I think he's broken his hand on the back on Alecia's exhaust, probably hit and
oh,
smacked it, and
man.
that damages Alecia's bike. You saw from the replay someone behind
Yeah.
him, I think it's one of the valves they've got in the rear, it come off, and then Aleix that left him with no torque, and bad engine braking, which is a shame because Aleix was quick this weekend.
Yeah, no torque, no engine brake, I think it damaged one of the foot pegs, like, it didn't look because it was a sort of a slowish speed crash, didn't look like it did a lot, but I guess some of them parts back there are kinda delicate, and, just essentially that nerfed his bike for the whole for the whole
Yeah.
GP.
And it also nerfed Morbidelli himself, so he breaks his hand, but that gives, and we should give him a little mention, it's Celestino Vietti, who's coming from Moto2, the VR46 protege, has got his first taste of MotoGP as a result. So he inherited Frankie's bike. So what a bizarre way to Frankie to finish the season, and he has got quite a lot of stick, not only from us, from everyone, I think, this season, seemed to like Frankie, but you have to say, again, I mentioned this last week, is the only one who's had 2 years on that GP24. I mean, he's been pretty consistent. I mean, I presume he lost out on the championship battle to Gian Antonio who is obviously on the more current bike, but you could argue the 24's better. 7th, he's kept his ride. I don't think he'll keep his ride maybe much longer. And if he keeps doing stuff like this, he's not making himself friends. But I think he gets a hard time. I'm a Frankie fan. I think it would be a more boring place without him, put it that way. But what an embarrassing incident and a horrible way for him to finish off. Talking about horrible ways to finish off, poor old Pecco, Zarco. Oh, that was just ridiculous from Zarco. I felt so sorry for Pecco, and he just have to laugh almost, Matt. I mean, it just can't get any worse.
Yeah, no, I think honestly Zarco felt so bad about it. I did read his side of the story because on the, again, on the replay, you're bereft of an awful lot of context, and if that's all you saw, you're just like, and a wild Zarco appears and just harpoons Bagnaia, ending his race 25 seconds after it starts, his last chance at glory and redemption for the season wasted. All the data that those engineers were desperate to collect to help them with the 26 bike, utterly done, gone. And it looked just like unlike the Mir one, this
Yeah,
very
Zarco looked a
clearly
bit
looked like a
looking
super
desperate.
optimistic, crazy move by Zarco. However, he got out dragged at the start by Quartararo, who subsequently had issues with his.
Oh, let's guess it. Ride height device.
Yeah, and Zarco says, I could see he was struggling and I could see the fork was locked out. So I thought he thought Quartararo had like a serious technical issue. And so he dove up the inside, but because of where he was, when he come inside, Bender was there and he had too much speed to avoid Bender. So he went back out wide. It was, I can understand, I don't think it was as mindlessly optimistic as it appeared on TV, but the end result was the same. Put Pecco out of his misery as rapidly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I was just so sorry. I mean, Pecco could do nothing about that at all, and that image of him just sitting there. I mean, I'm getting a bit sick and tired of sitting here and not being able to say nice things about Pecco Bagnaia because I think he's a nice guy and I can't do it. So it's going to be fascinating what they do next year. He was a bit more positive after the test yesterday, saying they found some direction. It seems to be okay, but surely the 26 will be a hybrid GP24, GP25 because they're stuck with the engines, Matt. We'll sum all this up and we could discuss this in the off season, not particularly now, but.
The only thing I want to bring up is that, and again, this is his end of the season thing, if I'm not already mentioned it, was Digi having the exact same complaint as Pecco about this bike. That it just has
Yeah, he's
two
only
different
just coming out saying
personalities, you
now.
don't ever know what you want to get. But if you go back to Thailand and you look, there has been a consistent discovery and finding an ability to improve the bike across the weekend that I think had gone missing for them
And that looks like
entirely.
he's come back a little bit now at least, so he's got something to cling on to going into next year,
Yeah,
which would be,
and sorry, because you have those consistent complaints amongst all the raiders who aren't named Mark Marquez, who might also have the same complaint, but just simply for whatever reason, it doesn't bother him. I think Ducati have a real area to look at and potential to make the bike, to reduce the gap between Marquez and everybody else. I don't know if it'll make Marquez any faster because he already seems to be pretty fast with this problem.
we've got a lot of debate to have in the off season to have
Oh, we
about
do.
that, so we can just go lots and lots of debates in the off season. So talk about areas to focus in on. There's an areas to focus in on for you, the listener, if you could. Why don't if you focus on giving us a bit of a subscribe if you're watching on the YouTubes, a like and subscribe, or if you could give us a rating or a comment and a review on your favorite podcast platform of choice, that would be fantastic. You can also get in touch with us and tell us how wrong we are, or maybe some areas we need to focus on for next season ourselves. And you can do that by sending an email to Mr. Apex Moto. That's mrapexmoto@gmail.com. Our sort of final topic I really want to talk about, because this was fascinating and it was great that it played out this way. We've already briefly mentioned it, was that concession battle for Honda to get P7. Matt, it was brilliant. So we said Mir has activated phase 1 of harpooning his teammate, getting himself a penalty and taking himself out of the equation. It's now down to Marini to finish the job off. Marini, lock up, tuck the front, put it into the gravel and finish the job off from Honda. I want to keep my concessions. But no, Matt, we got treated to a thrilling battle between him, Aldeguer and Miller over P7, which is the
Uh,
exact position they needed.
I was laughing about that until he managed to get there, and then I was like, I know people are like, "Oh, the race was boring. Bezzecchi rode off. There was some chasing behind, blah blah blah." But no, I'm watching Marini in 7th to the end of the race. I'm like, "Oh my god, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? Is he gonna? He did it! Yeah!" And I think I think the problem you have here, if I'm an engineer back at the factory, I'm kind of sad about this. Because I have much more room to be creative. I have more testing, I get my guys on the bike more, I get so much more data. I do love the data, endless data. But the incentives for the actual people who do the writing and fixing are,
Yeah,
they
who
get a
actually have
heck
to
of a
do
lot
it.
more days off once they leave this class, and, I think you just weren't gonna beat that. You
No.
just weren't gonna beat that as a motivation.
And that's a great point, actually, because they were celebrating at the end. And of course, Honda, it's a pride thing as well. They're a Japanese company. They want to get as high up as possible. And of course, their rivals are Yamaha, and they've left Yamaha down in D concession. So it looks better for Honda. And of course, they're going to have to justify this to their board and stuff like
Yep.
this to go in there. So it's good for them. And what they actually lose out isn't too bad. So they've gone down from 260 tyres for testing to 220. They're now not allowed to use their race riders for their test rider only. They're not allowed to go to any GP circuit. They can only go to 3 circuits. They still get the same amount of wild cards for 6. They get less engines per season. And the big one, they have a frozen engine spec now. So they have to freeze in on the engine spec and are only allowed 1 aero update apart from 2. But Marini said the actual mechanics come up to him afterwards and thanked him. They're like, thank you. I'll get a bit more holiday now because it must be exhausting. So all of them looked ecstatic. I mean, we joke saying they want to intentionally not get this concession thing, but they actually haven't lost that much. And I think they'd just be super stoked and happy that that's the target for the start of the year, probably was get yourself out of the concessions, or at least move up the concessions list. So yeah, great season. They must be very, very happy. But I thought it would have been hilarious if they'd done it, because if the Marini would have crashed, it would have been the tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, and there's plenty of them about online, would have been saying that it's an outrage and they've gamed the system.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have looked very bad for them had they actually not managed to pull it off. Because 'cause you're like 9 points, lead rider, sprint, and, how could that go? Oh, that's exactly how it could all go wrong. But, yeah, it would have always seemed very dodgy, and there'd be people out there just happily flaunting it. Interesting little note, one of the things that was nice about it is all the writers talk about sort of like what they feel the weak points was, and, for Honda, they said that their weak point is literally just mid-corner speed. That is what they are lacking. That is really what they wanna focus on,
Right,
but
for a straight line as well.
they don't seem to be bothered by that. They seem to think that their biggest losses are in mid-corner speed, and that because you say straight line, but if you're slower in the middle of a corner, you're starting 2, 3, 4 kilometers an hour less coming out of it, and you have to make that up rather than being the same speed, and then, you're fighting a battle on basically the same ground. I could understand why the one might look like the other. I'm not saying that's exactly what's going on here, but they also said that, like, we were really happy with the course of our development of the season, and they're just gonna continue to try and nickel and dime their bike into real contention up at the front on a consistent basis. Like they feel like they have a solid base and they're basically happy with it. So that's good news because the more the merrier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant. They've got one more season now to build on that. It'd be great to see them like many more podiums and to get Marini and Mir in the mix, and Zarco obviously in the mix there. And also there's the Diogo Moreira who's coming up from
Oh yeah.
Moto2 as well, and he's going on the LCR Honda next year, which is going to be fascinating to see. And something somebody forgot to mention at the top of the show, it's Somkat Chantra's last race as well. We haven't mentioned him all season. His tough gig, tough Honda, rookie at the back. I mean, that was always going to be a tough. And he's only got one shot at it before he gets booted, which is a shame for him. But still, he's had it on his CV that he's been a MotoGP rider for a season. So fair
I
play.
don't know. I don't know how it works, but he never looked unhappy no matter how badly things were going. So I think he was just ecstatic to have the opportunity to try.
Yeah.
And
And it must be
and fair
amazing.
play. Yeah.
Yeah, it must be amazing experiencing the bikes. Like I love Moreira's comments that he got off the bike today, and it was expletive, expletive, it's fast, expletive, expletive, expletive.
You know what he said that I loved? Or one it was I think it was him. He's like, "It's like your breaking point is the same as it is in Moto 2, but you're just traveling twice as fast when you get there."
Oh,
Can you
terrifying.
imagine what that's like?
I
Just
know, it's so
no.
crazy. Yeah, because it's the step up in the power, the aero, and the brakes. The brakes are the big ones. Carbon brakes must be
Yeah.
so tricky to keep on top of. So there's a few little things we need to wrap up and keep on top of as well. In our honourable mention section, Acosta snatched P4 in the championship again off of Bagnaia. That was looking increasingly likely with Acosta's really good late season spurt, and KTM coming on nice, but as you mentioned before, still no win. Must be very, 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 very annoying. And talking about annoying things, is Valencia a bad season-ending venue?
All right. I'll go first, because I know everything about MotoGP after watching it for 2 seasons.
You're in your teenage phase now.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. They like Valencia because, 1, I would bet a majority of the riders and, probably a majority of the crew live nearby. Short trip home. They do a test. They do a test there, and they don't have to move anything after the race is done, and it's an easy hop home for everybody. So I think from a logistics point of view, it retains its place. As far as racing, no, there are obviously much better tracks for racing. And the thing that really gets me, and I apologize, but if you're going to test, you want something, really a track that it has at least one very long straight. You want a track that has a complex of very low speed corners. And then you need a couple of medium high speed corners as well. Otherwise, you're not really getting full data. And I think that's why you see Malaysia being the real place because it
Yeah,
has
got a
all of those
bit of
things.
everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Valencia is a very specific kind of a track that's only going to tell you so much about it. So I don't even think from a testing point of view, it's that great. For me, yeah, I would love to see a more interesting track as the final choice, one that was maybe a little more wide open, but still European. But I would have to leave it up to you to pick what you think the best one would be and then to be able to go testing the next day. Because I don't know the
What?
circuit characteristics nearly as well as I do as with other series.
Yeah, that's an interesting question to put me on the spot, actually. I wasn't
Sorry. Oh,
expecting
sorry,
that.
sorry,
Um,
sorry.
well, so it has to be in Europe, and it has to
Yeah,
be fairly well, it has to be testable, so that counts out the UK immediately. 'Cause I was gonna say
too
Silverstone. I
cold.
was like,
But yeah, and the
way
weather,
too
there's the
cold,
other
and it's
thing.
horrible
Like
here. Yeah, weather's another thing.
it's a bit
Um,
cold for
the
testing
perfect
too.
place, I think, strange circuit, but it's got fast, it's got some slow corners. Aragon would be a
There you
great
go.
circuit to end on. Aragon would be brilliant. Jerez, tight and twisty, but that's a famous sort of testing track. Jerez would even do was something about Valencia. I think it's always characterless. I remember when they first brought it in 2000, no, 1999. Sorry, because I remember it. It was 1999, and I remember Gary McCoy power sliding the Red Bull Yamaha beautifully between in the flip-flop bits. So I remember when it first came in, and it built as a stadium circuit. So the one really cool thing about it is for the fans is it's one big stadium all around the outside of it, and you can see every bit of the track, but it's designed from the fans' perspective, not necessarily a racing or a corner sort of enjoyment perspective. And I think that really shows in it. I think it's a decent venue. We've never had epic races here. It's a bit to follow my leader, and I think you're right, because I would like to see a wider, more flowing track with better overtaking opportunities in a temperature that's actually acceptable. So you have to be in Spain somewhere. I think swap it
What's
out
the weather
for
in
Aragon.
Barcelona now?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, like last year, Barcelona's a great track as well. That's a great shout. Barcelona, or Aragon maybe, or well, I'll tell you what, Mugello. Let's just go to Mugello for every race. In fact, let's just go there.
Okay.
Let's have 22 rounds at Mugello. I'll quite happily settle for that. I think that's
Buy one of
everyone.
those little 15,000 fixer-uppers in Tuscany and just, done.
Yeah, and brilliant. And there's also Mazzano. There's like Italian tracks as well. There's a couple of them which you could do. But yeah, in general, I mean, it's almost tradition now. We've been going there for the final race of the season for an awful long time. I don't know. I don't think it's so bad, but I would prefer it to be a slightly different track. So let's move on then, and let's wrap up our review. This is our last race review of the season, Matt, which is
I know.
crazy. It's been a lot. This is our 25th episode of the season for the 22nd round of the championship. It's
They
been
keep
it's been a
saying
long slog.
longest season ever like it's a good thing, right?
I think maybe it's a bit too long. Maybe 20 rounds would be the sweet spot, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And we don't even work in the sport. We just give up our evenings free of charge to do this podcast, to do it, and it feels like a long slog even for us. So let's look at the championship standings, and quite unbelievably, Marc Marquez wins the championship by a whopping 78 points still after missing all of the races. It's insane, the amount of dominance. But we will come back and do like a season review show, so we won't go into that too much. So, of course, Alex Marquez second, Marco Bezzecchi a brilliant third, Pedro Acosta, you have to say, after the start, they had a fantastic fourth. Bagnaia, heartbreak down into fifth. Yeah, not much more to say about that. The Gin Antonio getting the VR46 one-upmanship award. Aldeguer, fantastic eighth in his debut season. And Raul Fernandez coming up to 10th in the championship, actually, with his strong finish. That's always good to see. And talking about strong finishes, Matt, we like to finish strongly by giving some awards out. As usual, you're going to go first because you're just going to steal stuff anyway, so you might as well just have an open goal. Who was your rider of the weekend?
I'm going to go with Raul Fernandez. There was a couple of really great options here, but Fernandez coming on in the sprint, being the lead rider, and we didn't really discuss it much, but he shut Bezzecchi down at the end of the Grand Prix. Because
Oh,
remember,
yeah, he closed him
he
right in.
closed
It got really close, didn't it?
yeah, he closed down a big gap, and I think Bezzecchi was able to match him, but only just barely. And that is because, as you mentioned, he's been here a while and he's just had very mid results up until now. I think it shows that that potential has been there all along. And always one of my things is I think people are very eager to get rid of new riders who don't immediately perform. And you can sort of do that because riders are replaceable widgets. There's always some phenom coming up in Moto3 or Moto2 you can just chuck on the bike. But I think Fernandez shows, and he gave a lot of credit to Brivio coming to the team
Yeah, the
as
mental support.
being very helpful to adjusting him fully to how to perform in the sport. It's worth it sometimes to wait. And I think Fernandez next season on this bike, I'm super excited to see what he does.
Yeah, me too. That was going to be my one, as usual. So I'm actually going to give it to somebody different, a bit odd. I'm going to give it to Jack Miller because I don't get the chance to give it to Jack Miller much. And he was arguably, yes, he had a bit of the kerfuffle in the sprint and was hard done by the stewards, but he was top Yamaha in the Grand Prix, and that's unusual to have him as the top Yamaha. I mean, it was unusual for him to stay on the bike, to be honest, but like it's unusual for him to be top Yamaha, and we like Jack, and I love his comments and how open he is with his feedback, and he's already made some cool comments about the V4, because Quattararo yesterday on the V4 was pretty quick. It was faster than his inline 4 time, but he did say there's some caveats around that he weren't. That yeah, he was on soft tires on the V4 and he was on used mediums, I think,
And a
on
full tank of
inline
gas.
4. Yeah, but Jack seems quite chipper and quite upbeat, and he was like, "They've got a direction. We know which way we're going. We know where we have to improve and get there." So I love the feedback that he gives because it's very, very open. So my rider weekend was Jack Miller. Now, Matt, your moment of the weekend.
This is there are so many definitional moments, but the sheer comedy value of the Morbidelli Espargaro. I've done it again. Listeners, I've
Yep.
done it again. The look, what did they say after the penalty? What did they say after Miller? Yeah, his face full of thunder. That was Kyle right now. I didn't mean to scoop that from you, honestly, but you it just like you totally see. Like, I guess if you just ride enough laps, watch enough races, you're going to see just about everything. And that was just about everything moment for Morbidelli. So it was hilarious. Even though I feel
That was.
bad, like Spargo's, I feel Spargo's like I
I
can't
feel
even
bad
be
for
mad
Elaine
at him
still.
because he broke his hand. He got injured, and I feel bad about thinking that was funny because someone got hurt, but it was funny.
Yeah, it was. It's one of those sort of comedy incidents. It's a shame it's resulted in broken bones, but MotoGP, it still was fairly fairly funny. So yeah, my moment of the weekend. Oh, I was gonna give it. I was gonna give it to Bagnaia being punted into the gravel and ending his season that way, and just being so unlucky because it fits it up. But I don't want to end on
You don't
such
want a
a.
bad
I
moment.
said, no, I don't end on a bad note. I felt so bad for Pecco. So my moment, my moment of the weekend. I'm going to give it to Digi's move to Rob Fernandez off the podium of the half a lap move going on because I love seeing moves like that play out. What would be great to see play out is if you follow my panel. So, Matt, where can people follow you?
You can find me at MattPT55 on pretty much all of your socials.
Excellent. You can also give us a like on your podcast platform of choice or follow us and subscribe and give us a like on YouTube. That would be fantastic. Well, that's a wrap for the 2025 season. We are going to be taking a well-earned break ourselves. As you said, we put this on. We don't take any wage or money from this. This is all out of our own time. So any sort of letters or support of encouragement will be very, very welcome. We love doing this show, but obviously it does take quite a lot of time. So it's been a long old season. But we will be returning for some off-season content to keep the whistles wet over the long, cold winter. As always, thanks for listening to Mr. Apex MotoGP.